Hello, this is Eileen, the environmental educator. In this video, we're going to talk about a village in southwest Alaska where its residents are now starting over because their town has just been encroached by, they say, climate change. So the last of the residents are moving out. A big bunch of them already moved out, and now the last of them are moving out. This is Anchorage Daily News. This is U.S. Harbor's Coastal News. This is the AP. It's actually the AP writers who wrote it. The AP even put out a little tweet X about it. This article has the most amount of information. It's the same two writers, and the other two articles are much briefer. Along the banks of the Ninglick River in southwest Alaska, they have gotten lots of strong storms from the Bering Sea, and the riverbank was creeping ever closer. And it just kept creeping ever closer. So today, erosion and melting permafrost have just about destroyed the town Newtok, eating about 70 feet of land every year. All that's left are some dilapidated and largely abandoned gray homes, scraped bare of paint and salt, darting in on the winds of the storms. They say in the next few weeks, the last 71 residents will move their possessions to Mertarvik. Okay, and right here, we can see a map of these two. This whole box right here is this red little area in Alaska. They were in Newtok, and now they're moving to Mertarvik because they have to. So once they move to Mertarvik, they're going to be rejoining the 230 residents who started moving away back in 2019, 5 years ago. They will become one of the first Alaska Native villages to complete a large-scale relocation because of climate change. A while back, the Newtok village leaders began searching for a new town site more than 2 decades ago. They ended up ultimately swapping land with the federal government for a place 9 miles away on stable volcanic underpinnings of Nelson Island in the Bering Strait, which is this new Mertarvik on Nelson Island right there. They say that the move has been slow over 5 years, and it kind of split the village. It left some teachers and students separated from their homes and families for the school year. And even though a lot of people left, the grocery store and the school remained in Newtok, but people have been moving over, and now the last of them are moving over to their new home. The tribal administrator, Calvin Tom, called Newtok a place not livable anymore. Erosion has tilted power poles precariously, and a single good storm this fall will knock out power for good, he said. With the ground becoming so unstable, the big power poles just lean over, and pretty soon they'll just be grounded. Not to mention a bunch of other problems they've been having in losing 70 feet of land a year. Even though every independent news media will tell you global warming's not real, climate change isn't real, nothing ever happens, but these people would argue with it. This whole entire little town has to move. They're going to have a difference of opinion with the independent truth media. It says here that Alaska is warming 2 to 3 times faster than the global average. They say, with permafrost degradation damaging roads, railroad tracks, pipes, and buildings for 4 million people across the top of the world, indigenous people are being moved to cities instead of having their eroding villages relocated across Scandinavia. Reindeer herders are finding the land constantly shifting and new bodies of water appearing, because all of this permafrost is very wet land. So when it thaws out, it becomes very wet. When Alaska lies on permafrost, it's supposed to be permanently frozen ground. It holds a lot of water, and when it thaws, or when warmer coastal waters hit it, its melting causes further erosion. Another issue is less sea ice to act as a natural barrier to protect coastal communities from the dangerous waves of ocean storms. They say that the tribe have a word for catastrophic threats of erosion and flooding and thawing permafrost, which is USTEQ, which means surface caves in. They say the changes are usually slow until all of the sudden they aren't, as when a riverbank sloughs off or a huge hole opens up. There's 144 Alaskan Native communities that face some degree of infrastructure damage from erosion, flooding, or permafrost melt. They say that communities have three options based on the severity of their situations: securing protection to stay where they are, staging a managed retreat, moving back from erosion or threats, or 3, a complete relocation. But to relocate, finding a place to go is hard. Communities typically need to swap land with the federal government, which owns 60% of Alaska, but Congress has to approve swaps, and that's only after negotiations that can drag on. Newtok, for example, began pursuing the Nelson Island land in 1996 and didn't wrap up until 2003. That's just way too long. So that's good for these Native Americans here, but not a lot of places can just go to their government and somehow be able to just swap land that's being eroded and isn't even going to be here for land that exists. They say another big hurdle is the cost. Newtok has spent decades and about $160 million in today's dollar on its move. Estimates to relocate Kivalina vary from 100 to 400 million and rising, and there's currently no federal funding for that relocation. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has disaster funding and programs, but that comes only after a disaster's been declared. Homes of people are seen in Mertarvik. So this is where they're going to, right? No trees up in the Arctic. There's just no trees. A resource for Alaska communities identified 60 federal funding sources for relocation, but only a few have been successfully used to address environmental threats. But an infusion of funding into these existing programs could provide benefits to the threatened Alaska communities. About $4.3 billion in 2020 dollars will be needed to mitigate infrastructure damage over the next 50 years. It called for Congress to close an $80 million annual gap by providing a single committed source to assist communities. But now, after 5 years of separation, the residents of Newtok and Mertarvik will be one again. The school closed and classes started in August for the first time in a temporary location in Mertarvik. The new school should be ready by 2026. The grocery store also moved. So now the whole town has moved over. Things like this are going to keep happening. Stay tuned, people.